The most important part of non-duality isn't the intellectual side of it, isn't the understanding of non-duality, although that's really profound and beautiful, and there can be these intellectual awakenings where the you, the person, realizes, it has some experiences and it realizes that it it is the experience, it is whole, it isn't the experiencer, there is something else that's experiencing. And there can be these openings, and the person kind of realizes it. It's seen by the person that everything is wholeness experiencing itself. And then there can be this energetic shift, which is the end of that energy being contracted inside of the body. So it's the end of claiming all these habits and these behaviours. And it's not so much about reconditioning yourself, although in that process there is lots of reconditioning happening. It's about that energy of something being the centre and the experience of this collapsing. And that energy is holding on to the conditions, the habits, the body, the behaviour, the life, the memories, the intellect, the ideas. But it's not necessarily about all of those things changing, although a lot of them do change in this. But the most important part is the honesty. What do I mean by the honesty? I don't mind me not telling a lie. Lying can still happen. That sounds even odder with the word honesty. But I mean the ending of living a lie, the ending of living in an illusion. So the separate self is full of lies. It's full of illusions that it believes it is. And waking up is kind of like collapsing back into this until you stop living, the separate entity stops living in a timeline of itself, in a mental image of itself, in a mental reality of itself. what we often like to use non-duality as is a new way of avoiding what we feel and avoiding what's happening. So we want to live in the concept of no doership. We want to live in the concept of no self, of no person, not because or for non-duality, but because you want to not feel the pain in which you feel. So if you feel angry at someone, then the thought might want to say there is nobody to be angry at, to try to pacify that anger and not be angry. But the most beautiful thing that can be done is just when the person feels separate, even though ultimately there isn't someone there, is just look underneath what you feel. So if you feel anger, look underneath it. Normally it's vulnerability or lack or wanting something else, feeling like you didn't get enough. So if you just look at that feeling, then you can go underneath it and see that all feelings come down to two primary feelings, fear and lack. As soon as there's identification, the separate person has two major feelings, that I am not enough, I'm scared, and lack, I am not lovable. The world isn't giving me what I deserve. I deserve more. And so say if you're feeling anger on the surface at someone, so you're angry at someone, the mind, not that there's anything ultimately wrong with anger, anger can be also a really positive emotion, but when you're identified and the mind keeps repeating the story about what's happening, then that separate person can explore that storyline. And often what you'll want to do on the top is start saying non-dual things. There is nobody there. There is nobody to blame. It's not their fault because there is nobody. I'm not somebody. There's nobody that hurts. And that's living a lie. That's trying to be something else than what you are. So you can use that to go back, and then you can be, I'm fucking pissed off with that person. I'm really pissed off with that person. And then, okay, I'm pissed off with that person because they make me feel vulnerable. Okay, I feel vulnerable. And then you can go deeper. I am afraid of being alive. I am afraid. I feel fear. I feel fear. It always comes back. You can always follow back any emotion, any separate emotion to them. But then you also have natural emotions. So there is natural emotions that occur as well. So emotions are always going to appear. We have these chakra centers, and they're going to appear when you're identified or you're not. But I'm just talking about when you're suffering and you're identified and you're contracted and you keep repeating stories. I'm talking about that. But there's natural feelings of anger, jealousy, competition even. So we have these chakra areas which have these feelings, and they have positive and negative feelings, each of these chakra areas, and that's never going to stop. There's always going to be feelings and reactions to circumstance, and they're really important for this body to function in the world. Like people often think that anger shouldn't be there if you wake up. Anger is such an important emotion. When I first woke up, when there was first awakening here, I was so blissed out that I would feel anger, but because there was so much bliss, I wouldn't act on the anger. And then what would happen is that people would treat me inappropriately. Because if you don't have this energy, now I'm not saying anger is abuse or hatred, I don't mean it in that way, I mean this energy, this forceful energy of no. In Chinese medicine, they say that people that are afraid of anger and don't express anger, and when there's a denial of anger, they often experience depression, because anger is a really vital force. And I don't mean it in the negative, like when you're identified, you hate people for what they've done. You dislike people for what they've done. You blame people for what you've done. I'm talking anger that's like, no, this is not okay to behave like that. Or, no, I don't want to do it. With Khaleesi, there needs to be anger sometime, although she's a very good doggy. But when you're identified, it becomes a story about the other person. And even though you need the story in a vague way for there to be anger, it becomes an elongated story of dislike and hatred for the other person, and truly wanting them to be something else than what they are. But when you're identified, and the way that you can tell it's identification is there's this contraction of suffering, there's this feeling of being bound inside the body and it's happening to you. You can explore these feelings, and I'm not suggesting that we get rid of all these feelings, but what I'm trying to show you is how these stories, the stories that you create, are coming from two basic things of fear and lack. So say if you really believe someone's done something to you, what the identified selves will start doing is start telling the story of non-duality or spirituality to avoid it. But you can, but that's useless. That's obviously it's there's point in listening to non-duality, but not to try to be non-dual. If you try to be non-dual, you'll just become dead and cold. That's not non-duality. So when you're telling yourself non-duality when you feel uncomfortable, I can assure you that is identified action that's trying to avoid what's happening. So what you need to do is go the opposite way. When you feel separate, you need to go inward, seemingly inward, although ultimately there is no inward and outward. So you feel unloved by someone. So they don't give me enough attention, they're never going to love me, da, 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 da. But you don't even know this. Then you use non-duality, there is no one that can love. But go the other way, so they take things away, they never give, they're stingy. And then see that you feel behind that anger at that person for not giving you what you want. And then see underneath the anger there is lack, that you feel like you're missing something and the world or the other person isn't giving you that. Then you can go underneath that and see that really you just feel unloved, that you're not lovable. And then you can go even further, you can feel that you feel like you've been abandoned by God or wholeness. It's really important to listen to non-duality, and it's important I speak non-duality, but I realise that you see, in the past, when non-duality was spoken about, traditionally it was done one-to-one. So there would be one person. There was also group talks, but you would know the person that was speaking about non-duality with you, and so then when you were using non-duality to just boycott what you're actually feeling, that would be pointed out. But I meet lots of people that think they're awakened because they're telling themselves the story of non-duality and they're curbing all their reactions and all their emotions. And this isn't non-duality at all. Non-duality is about becoming fully human and not human at the same time. So it's seeing that who you truly are isn't the form, and then the effect of that is for the human to be truly and utterly human and humane, which is so beautiful. Not someone that's constantly living in non-duality. So what I have to do now is, because I realise that so many people are trying to fake it and pretend that they're awakened and pretend to themselves that they don't suffer anymore, is point out that you can tell if you're suffering by the contractions in your body. Like, explore the sensations of the body. But it's also really important to listen to non-duality, because it's got to be seen, not by someone, but those clouds have got to pass enough for it to be recognised that who you are isn't that separate entity, aren't the clouds. Who you are is the light that is shining behind it, and is everything, is the whole entire universe. You could call it aliveness or beingness. So, okay, we can take questions now.